That was amazing. Congratulations to the winners. Hi everyone, my name is Martina Novakova. I'm a Fulbrighter from Bulgaria, studying educational and community engaged theater at NYU Steinhardt. I am a theater maker and a teaching artist, and I have spent most of the past 6 years teaching in both Bulgaria and Spain. I had the privilege of going into 2 New York City schools this spring through One to World's Global Classroom program to share my country and my culture with public school students. I showed them images of Bulgaria's beautiful nature, and I taught them how to write in Cyrillics. I also shared with them that we are facing a lot of challenges with our corrupt government in the past 10 years. And when I pointed to Bulgaria on the map, they saw straight away that its area of the world is anything but stable right now. I was so impressed by our conversations. Despite the obvious differences in age, culture, and life experiences, our communication was actually very, very easy. Because what became clear is that we are united by much more than the things that separate us. To see yourself through the eyes of someone from a different culture, to see them interested in your story, you start to value it yourself in a different way. This was so true to me personally, as it was for the students. Global Classroom shows them that they can take pride in their diverse backgrounds and that our differences can be a source of strength and knowledge, not conflict. I wish I had this opportunity when I was a child. And I can tell you as an educator, as an international student, as a global citizen, One to World and all of their programs change lives. Now, on behalf of One to World, I want to ask Charles to come back and to help us change even more students' lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jatin Mohan, and I'm a Fulbright Nehru Scholar from India. I'm working toward my PhD in musicology, focused on scale theory at the University of Delhi. I am a trained vocalist and hold a master's in Hindustani music. It is my deep honor to be here tonight. I'm supposed to be back in India already. My program at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York ended earlier this month. My lease was up. I had a flight booked, but when I had the chance to be a part of this very special evening, I moved mountains to stay. I did. I first applied for Fulbright in 2019 and got rejected. I applied again in 2020, and second time is a charm. And I became the first Fulbright scholar from my institution since its establishment. I take it not only as a huge honor, but as a significant responsibility. I'm working with many students back home, inspiring them to pursue research and apply for opportunities like Fulbright. My goal is to create a more research-oriented environment in the music conservatories across India. I want to be just the beginning of a much larger change. My primary interest is in musicology, but I'm open to anything at this point of my career. I currently have 5 different plans involving 5 different countries, but one thing is clear, I'll always keep traveling. Since my Fulbright program began in August, I, like Iris, registered for almost every One to World event. I have attended behind-the-scene tours, receptions, social activities, volunteer programs. I have truly become part of a global community, the One to World community. My very first event was an academic sharing session by an Algerian scholar about colonialism and its effect on mental health. It was not just the knowledge I gained that was so valuable, but also the other students I met. A neurologist from Georgia, a scholar from Indonesia, a scholar from Thailand, and one from Kenya. Being able to share knowledge with people from different parts of the world with different life experiences, that affected me very, very deeply. The world is full of conflict and divisions. The scale of the problems can be overwhelming, but the opportunity that One to World and Fulbright have given me, and so many others, to go out of your cocoon to meet people who have very different cultural constructs is so valuable. I mean, for me, having the experience of meeting Pakistani Fulbrighters here, to not mince words, we were institutionally taught to hate them, and they were taught the same. But being here, having shared experiences, it breaks that cocoon, and we all just become fellow humans. My experience with One to World transformed my thinking, and it has truly transformed my life. I now have the great pleasure of introducing our next honoree, Mr. Ram Jagannath. Mr. Jagannath is the global head of healthcare at Blackstone and is responsible for investing across the firm's private equity, tactical opportunities, and growth businesses. You might be wondering what a musicologist and a healthcare investor have in common. Well, that's a good question. For one, a shared cultural heritage. Mr. Jagannath's parents came to the US from India in the early 1970s, a few years back before he was born. As a child of immigrants, he was keenly aware that his life growing up in New England was very different from his friends at school. Mr. Jagannath received his bachelor's degree from Duke University in biomedical and electrical engineering with a minor in economics. The summer after his junior year, on a fellowship through Duke, he worked at a Bosnian refugee camp on an island in the Adriatic Sea. The experience proved transformative, igniting in him a passion for the region and for humanitarian work. He started studying Serbo-Croatian when he arrived home, knowing he wanted to go back. He thought the Fulbright program might give him that chance. After graduation, and waiting on word about his application, he moved to Bosnia for the summer to work on a microcredit program for rural women, many of whose husbands and sons had been killed in the war. He got the Fulbright, and soon he was at the University of Zagreb studying foreign direct investment in Croatia. He also did work with an NGO helping to repatriate ethnic Serbs back into Croatia. Mr. Jagannath was heading for a career in international development when his brother gave him some advice that would alter his course. He suggested that learning about how money works, about capital markets, would give him the skills to make a bigger impact in the world. So he got a job at an investment bank and then a private equity firm. It wasn't long before healthcare companies were part of his portfolio, he discovered that he really loved helping businesses grow whose goods and services were meant to help people. After a quick jaunt to Northwestern University to get both a JD from the Pritzker School of Law and an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management, Mr. Jagannath began working at the Carlyle Group, where he spent 12 years focused on healthcare investments around the world. He then became a founding partner of Nawab Capital Partners before joining Blackstone in 2019. Last year, he was recognized in Modern Healthcare's 100 most influential people in healthcare and Growth Cap's top 25 healthcare investors. Mr. Jagannath describes his career path as more of a random walk. I greatly admire how he has always been guided by his intellectual curiosity, always followed what drove him and where he believed he could have the most impact. It's my true pleasure to present the One to World Fulbright Award for Global Healthcare Innovation and Development to Ram Jagannath.
Good evening, everyone. You know, after I heard Morgan speak, I was very glad that I didn't have to go right after her. And then I heard George, and I said, okay, I'm blown away by both of you, so this is where we are. It's great to be here tonight. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jatin, for that very generous and kind introduction. And thank you, Jen and One to World, for this recognition. It's really, really a great honor, and I'm very humbled to receive it. I also want to thank my friends and family who came tonight to support me and the organization, and for all your generous support to One to World and its important mission. And of course, nothing would be possible without my wife, Courtney. Thank you for keeping me sane every day, and for having our two daughters, Luna and Mila, who are 8 and 6.5, so they couldn't be here tonight. They were probably asleep, but hopefully they'll see the video someday. I must also say that I'm deeply flattered to be considered among this august group of honorees. You know, Morgan, George, Toni, your work is so impressive and inspiring, and I'm really proud to share this evening with you. And last, to Jatin and all the other Fulbrighters who are here from abroad, I really celebrate your passions. I look forward to seeing all the incredible things that you're going to continue to do with your lives and in your own countries. Thank you guys for being here. The Fulbright program and the work of One to World has tremendous meaning to me, as my life has been defined by the interconnectedness of our global community. In the early 1970s, when the US opened its borders to encourage immigration of scientists, doctors, and engineers from abroad, my parents came here from India with only $400 in a suitcase. They knew little of America, had no friends or family here, but sacrificed the world they knew to pursue a better life for their children, for me and my brother. A classic immigrant story. I was born a few years after their arrival to the States and grew up cherishing both my American and Indian identities. My parents' cultural tenets centered around education, family, empathy, and faith. These values, quite unexpectedly, led me to Croatia in 1997, where as a 20-year-old junior studying engineering at Duke, I had the opportunity to work in a refugee camp with Bosnians who had fled their homes due to the civil war in Yugoslavia. Candidly, my parents thought I had lost my mind when I told them I was headed to Croatia, but of course I went anyway. Although my goal in going to Croatia that summer was to help people in a war-ravaged region, even though I really had no skills with which to do anything to really help, it turns out that I was the one who benefited most from the experience. It's easy to think of refugees as destitute people living in some faraway place, very unlike our own. However, these refugees were in the middle of Europe and on the picturesque Croatian coastline, which you guys saw a picture of. The people in the camp were doctors and lawyers and teachers in their native Bosnia. Yet as soon as they fled their homes, they became refugees without citizenship or access to basic human rights like healthcare. And although they had little to their names and were destined for the United States to restart their lives, they remain to this day the most generous and hopeful people I've ever met. In many ways, they reminded me of my parents' own journey to this country. I developed a deep passion for the plight of the Bosnian people, and thanks to Duke and the Fulbright program, I subsequently worked on a microcredit project in Bosnia, a repatriation project for ethnic Serbs in Croatia, and my Fulbright research study on foreign direct investment at the University of Zagreb, under the tutelage of Professor Sumitra Sharma. If that name doesn't sound Croatian, it's because it's not. Professor Sharma, an Indian native, ironically visited Croatia 2 decades prior on an academic exchange program, fell in love with a Croatian woman, got married and stayed, and became a professor in Zagreb. Of course, I was able to find the only other Indian in Zagreb to be my academic mentor. These collective experiences were life-changing, as you can imagine, and they really showcased the power and resilience of the human spirit. These were lessons that only experiential learning could provide. None of this could have come from just sitting in a classroom. Importantly, I also got my first understanding of the power of capital investment and job creation as an effective lever of economic development, learnings which helped shape the course of my professional career. And while I often think my life journey is a lot like Forrest Gump, filled with many lucky breaks and a willingness to go wherever the road took me without a preordained destination, I'm forever grateful for the foundational experience I received living, studying, and volunteering in Bosnia and Croatia during that extremely formative period of my life. To this day, I remain committed to driving change and making a positive impact on our world, whether by investing in healthcare companies or dedicating time in the service of nonprofits. However, I feel dismay for the current state of our world. A global pandemic that shut borders, another tragic war in Europe, hauntingly similar to the one in Yugoslavia in the early 90s, the marginalization of women in Afghanistan, among other challenges. Just yesterday, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees reported that the number of forcibly displaced people, aka refugees, exceeds 100 million people worldwide. What a staggering and deplorable figure. Hearing the phrase deglobalization in the press today makes me shudder. And frankly, not something I ever expected to hear in my lifetime. And that is why the Fulbright program and the work of organizations like Wonderworld are so critically important now more than ever. We must persevere in our own individual efforts to overcome these major threats to the connected world that we all cherish, so that our children may have the same ability to roam the globe freely as I did, and have the experiences which have so profoundly shaped all of our lives. As Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. We must all strive to keep going through these challenging times to preserve Senator Fulbright's remarkable vision of global connectivity. Thank you again, Jen and Wonderworld, for this great honor and for all of the great work that you do. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much, Ram. This resonated a lot with my story. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I hope you're enjoying the evening so far. My name is Elisa Yami, and I am a Fulbright student from France, working toward a PhD in political science at Temple University in Philadelphia. I hold master's degrees in international security from the Paris School of International Affairs at Sciences Po, as well as the French Institute of Advanced Study in National Defense. I was born in Algeria and moved to France when I was 3. I grew up in the suburbs of Paris, which is very different from the suburbs in the US. In my hometown, Garges-les-Gonesse, I was surrounded by more than 100 nationalities. It was rich in culture and diversity, but it also suffers from high unemployment and a lot of other challenges. So growing up in this environment convinced me to study politics. My first year at Sciences Po was hard. It is one of the most privileged institutions in France and in the world. It was very hard. I was surrounded by people who had gotten a better education than me, and it was a huge social and cultural adjustment. But I learned to dig deep and to keep pushing. And now, here I am, working toward my PhD. My parents, thank you. I'd say that my parents are proud because they finally will have a doctor in the family. So I began my Fulbright program at Temple in 2019, and I jumped at the chance to be part of Wonderworld's delegation to the Foreign Affairs Conference at West Point. It was an incredible experience, academically, professionally, and personally. That's also where I met my best friend, a West Point cadet, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that we're best friends. We FaceTime like 3 times a day. I just got back from her graduation, and she's here tonight. She's an officer. Wonderworld is a space where you meet very benevolent and genuine people. It's a space to spread very positive ideas and to learn from one another. And spaces like this have become more and more rare. We think that we have access to the whole world online, but we really don't. We don't have the same kinds of deep connections that I have made because of Wonderworld. And when I think of Wonderworld, I think of it as a mix of a 19th century kind of salon and the social networking sites that we have now. And I think the decor tonight is helping. So it's a very beautiful combination for personal fulfillment and also for career enhancement. In my career, I want to play a meaningful role in debates evolving around conflict resolution and peace. As the speakers before me mentioned, a lot of people around the world suffer from conflicts and war, violence, political violence, which only grow more and more complex and harder to untangle. So I want to use my expertise to help find ways to understand and resolve them. And more than that, I really want to be a decision maker with a real impact, and it's criticized for scholars often. So being a woman in such spaces requires so much energy, and which is the reason why one of the reasons why I am deeply inspired by tonight's final honoree, Toni G. Verstandig. Throughout her awe-inspiring career, she has been tireless in her efforts to shape a more stable and peaceful world. Ms. Verstandig is a preeminent foreign policy advisor and expert on the Near and Middle East. From 1994 to 2001, she served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Near East Affairs. She was responsible for directing US bilateral relations and overall policy concerning Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, the Palestinian Authority, Egypt, and the Arabian Peninsula. She was also a member of the Middle East peace team focused on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where she worked on creating pathways for enhanced Arab-Israeli normalization and support for the two-state solution. She was the only woman on the team for years until the late Madeleine Albright, who became her close friend and mentor, came on as Secretary of State in 1997. Ms. Verstandig, a fierce advocate for bipartisanship, worked for the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee for 16 years before joining the State Department. Among many achievements, she played a key role in passing the legislation that established the US Institute of Peace in Washington, D.C., and she now serves on its International Advisory Council. Since leaving the public sector, Ms. Verstandig has continued working closely on Middle East issues. She served as Executive Vice President of the S. Daniel Abraham Center for Middle East Peace, and for many years has chaired the Aspen Institute's Middle East program, developing innovative initiatives like Partners for a New Beginning and the Aspen Abu Dhabi Next Gen Leadership and Innovation Program. Ms. Verstandig is an active supporter of and participant in the Aspen Ministers Forum, founded by Secretary Albright, which convenes former foreign ministers for candid dialogue on critical global challenges, and develops recommendations that can realistically be applied. Many other major institutions, including the Atlantic Council, Brookings Institution, the Center for New American Security, have benefited from Ms. Verstandig's expert participation. Ms. Verstandig also serves on the boards of and works closely with the National Democratic Institute, the National Cryptologic Foundation, the Risk and Return Foundation, and the University of Denver's Corbell Graduate School for International Affairs. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and Washington's Cabinet on Mount Vernon. She recently completed service on the Center for Global Development Board, as well as a 20-year board tenure at Children's National Hospital, where she was chair of the Hospital Foundation and served on the parent board. Ms. Verstandig's lifelong commitment to giving back has culminated in the establishment of the Verstandig Family Foundation, co-founded with her son Grant. The foundation channels disruption model thinking to philanthropy and accelerates public-private partnerships to drive policy and impact change on the ground. It is my deepest honor to present the One to World Fulbright Award for International Diplomacy and Philanthropy to Toni Verstandig.
You must wonder what I do in my spare time. Listening to that, I actually do wonder. First of all, thank you so much, Elise. I just said she did an extraordinary job, and I'm very proud of her, as well as all the Fulbright scholars who are here. You've heard from my colleagues from Morgan. I must tell you, I'm a little nervous about ending this evening, Morgan. You set a very, very high standard. And George and Ram, your very inspirational comments. But I want you to know they were truly inspirational. There were themes throughout: global community, the sense of knowing one another, of reaching beyond lines, and getting to actually engage with one another. And that's the only way we can move forward for this next generation. So I really am deeply appreciative to all of you. I'm also humbled beyond words to be here this evening and to receive this award. It means a great deal to me. And a special thank you to Jen. We've all recognized Jen Clark, but I also would like to recognize the entire staff of One to World. Without you, without your engagement, we all know how much goes into not only this evening, but the day-to-day of actually making things work. And I thank you so much for fostering this dialogue, intellectual, and global curiosity that underpins the spirit of the Fulbright Awards in a very real and meaningful way. We heard it tonight from the presenters and those of us who've had the opportunity to engage with you all. So I thank you so, so much. For those in this room in particular, a special thank you for joining me, and you know me well. I think I can be described as an optimistic pragmatist. One needs that perspective when engaging with the broader Middle East, fighting for democracy and supporting women broadly, and ensuring that women have a seat at the table. I believe so strongly that direct engagement is a critical component to fostering stability, which is the seed to understanding, reconciliation, and resilience. Direct engagement, though, is no easy task. While creating new pathways, it is essential to have in one's toolbox, which fosters that support for peace, reconciliation, which is the backbone for stability in the global community that we're all referencing. Yes, you heard about my career. I hope my career will continue. It's far from being over. I've designed and manufactured many public-private partnerships, all of which are intended to create new pathways to support civil society. And I've learned all too often that while the public-private partnerships have been extraordinarily meaningful, all too often it was the first time that whether civil society leaders or business leaders, it was the first time that they met with their own governments. And that is a note of caution, because partnerships, and I think Morgan, you mentioned it, it takes time to get progress. It is hard work. But the problem we have is in this ever-changing global economy and the conflict that is enveloping that global economy, we need progress, and we need it now. And it's hard to reconcile those two dynamics. Civil society, and especially young leaders, we need them out. We need them out on the street, but we need them to engage in their governments. It is the only way that we can effectuate change. And I know they too want very much to engage, and it's no easy task. People do need to see deliverables in order to get traction. A good case in point is the Middle East, where there remains a deficit of participation, a deficit of knowledge, of economic opportunity and peace. My argument is we have to convene to act. We have to address, as the UN spelled out, these 4 deficits some 20 years ago. And sadly, I'm here to tell you, it hasn't changed, not one bit. Be it in America, the Middle East, or any other global area facing discontent or conflict, when you pause and engage in an exchange of ideas, of seeing a person across that divide, and understanding one another's needs, a shared consensus seems to emerge, which happens to support fostering social cohesion and facilitates an environment for sustainable growth and development while tackling the above-mentioned 4 deficits that I referred to. With any of this work, we must define our roles and responsibilities and ensure that they line up. Seeing the young Fulbright scholars, many of whom are in this room, brings me enormous hope. I had the opportunity to meet with many of them, to hear their dreams, their aspirations, and their takeaways. And from the time they spent in the United States, I can assure you, they're rolling up their sleeves. They're challenging assumptions today and looking at how they're going to return to their respective homes. And they assured me that that return is going to be different because they have a better understanding of America, of the time they spent here, of building what I call a rich toolbox of knowledge and hopefully mentoring others as they were mentored. The urgent need is now. Time isn't waiting to fight against social and political uncertainties. As we are witnessing in many countries, steps seem to be taking backward, not forward. What we also know to be accurate, the generation that is coming of age today is smart, outspoken, and fearless. They're pushing us, everyone in this room, to do more as they shoulder more of the burden. The Fulbright scholars, in my mind, are a real bridge. They bridge the world of ideas and action. They are rolling up their sleeves. They're bringing to the table real solutions to address the instability in their countries, which seems to be doubling down. Authoritarianism is on the rise, and the deep polarization which provides the platform for discontent is deepening. New platforms for engagement and delivering on our own well-intentioned ideas for change are vital. We need to be sure that this generation and these scholars are at the table. Let's stand by them and mentor them, help show them, these and future scholars, what we have learned and the values we hold dear, and above all, learn from them. They're willing to engage and push the envelope, and we should mentor them to the extent possible to better leverage these scholars, their goals and aspirations, as it is they who are on the battlefield of ideas. We owe it to this generation to be optimistic, that change can happen if we and they get engaged. Yes, it may take a little longer than expected, but now is not the time to be negative and cower to those who prefer a backward slide. In closing, let me pay special recognition to our son Grant, who is just that generation that's fully present. He's on the battlefield of ideas. He's moving to inform and push us to think outside the box, to engage and mentor others. He has, in his very brief 33 years, accomplished and done so much for good and has stepped forward to mentor others. To my husband, Lee, who's always stood by my side, who helped both Grant and me understand the value of mentorship and active community engagement, thank you to you both for always being by my side. As my friend and mentor, Madeleine Albright, whom you all know we've just lost, one of the most extraordinary, talk about an immigrant story. She was quite an extraordinary person and a real mentor to me. She often said, quote, "We must be doers to have a resilience of spirit and to buckle up our boots." And before I close, a special note to acknowledge my mom, My sister's here with me today, and my nephew, Brady. We just lost our mom. She was the other mentor in my life. My mom was a trailblazer well beyond her years. So as Madeline said, let's buckle up our boots. I have, and I hope each of you will do so. Thank you very much.
Ram, you were worried about following an act. Whew. Toni, thank you. We're coming to the end of our evening, and before we do the drawing of a case of award-winning wine, which is the evening's door prize, I just really want to thank all the presenters and the honorees tonight. This has been, yes, please give them a round of applause. Your lives really are a testament to the transformational work that One to World aspires to do every single day, and you just epitomize it in human form. So thank you again. If you have not yet made a donation this evening, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say this part. You can still do so, and if you wish to support the work that we do, you can just take a look at the back of your menu card. There's that QR code. There's also onetoworld.org/dinner2022. You can click on and make a donation there. There's also pledge cards if you wish to donate the old-fashioned way. They're on your tables. I also call your attention to those pledge cards because that is your opportunity to let us know how you would like to get involved in our programs. You heard tonight how important the work is of One to World and Fulbright. You also heard how important individual action is. Everyone can make a difference. We rely on you, our friends and supporters, to engage with these outstanding students, some of whom you heard from tonight. There's an opportunity to just tick a box on that pledge card, fill it out, let us know you want to get involved, and we would love to follow up with you. Toni had the opportunity to meet with some of our students. George has too. It's really an extraordinary opportunity. You heard from them tonight, but just to be able to see and be around them and knowing that we're helping to engage with them as they return home. It's part of the Fulbright vision that they return home with a more deeper, richer experience and a different view of the United States that they may get from the media and otherwise. So we would love to have you involved. Let me get to the door prize. Come on up, Becca. So this is actually for a case of biodynamic, eco-friendly French wine, donated by one of our former honorees, Kevin Parker, and Chateau Marie. There is only one rule. You must be here to actually win, but you're all still here. So, is that $10,000? $115? No. So yes, if you hear your name, just let us know that you're here, and then come on down and give us some delivery information, and we'll take care of that. Oh. Oh. George, the logopedist. We'll deliver it, don't worry. I'll come help you with that, though, George. Anyways, congratulations. It is. Do you want to take that? Yeah, okay. You can take it to International House. They'll have a great time. Thank you all very much for coming here this evening. It has been a real pleasure, and I hope you stay connected with One to World, and I really look forward to seeing you again next year. Have a lovely evening.